Hello and welcome back to the Energy Connect studio at ADIPEC 2025, where my guest today is Steve Frawler, the president of LCO Technologies. Thank you so much, Steve, for joining us today at the Energy Connect studio.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And to start off, could you talk to us more about Crossfire pumps? And they're built around the idea of lowering the cost of ownership. Talk to us more about that.
We're responding to demands from our customers to be able to provide a product that is chemical injection pumps are considered ancillary equipment with respect to oil and gas production. The problem with them is they're a critical component within that infrastructure, and they tend to be fairly problematic, especially when they're solar powered. And in response to their demands, we're trying to deliver a product that is going to require less maintenance. What we're seeing in the oil and gas industry these days is constrained budgets. More wells are coming online. They're not allowed to rehire. They're not allowed to hire more people. So more wells, same number of guys, everyone's working very hard, and they can't be spending a great deal of time working on equipment like ours. So by reducing the amount of work required, we're improving their return on investment because they're not having to invest in labor, they're not having to take that critical labor away from other very critical functions.
Now, reliability seems to be one of the core values that you offer with Crossfire. And talk to us more about how that impacts your customers and your product services.
Our objective is to try and provide a product that is not going to exacerbate an already problematic situation. So when you've got a hostile environment like a 50 degrees centigrade outside temperature, what can happen is if your equipment is generating additional heat through energy consumption or friction, it will elevate the temperature of the equipment to a point where it can become quite unreliable. So it's important to have a product that is very, very, very low energy consuming and is built in an extremely efficient manner that will run with very little resistance. So what we have endeavored to do is deliver a product that works methodically, works efficiently, and is not going to elevate the temperature of any of the associated equipment, including itself. The result of that, the end result of that, is a product that will, in that hostile environment, will last longer. Not just the equipment, but all of the solar infrastructure and all the other ancillary equipment associated with supporting it.
That's an excellent point, and you've mentioned that heat is a cause of battery failure in many of these circumstances. Now, how does Crossfire's low power design help, especially with the reducing the frequency of replacements?
When you look at a typical battery, even a high temperature rated battery is limited to 60 degrees C. When it gets up to 50 degrees C outside, that's only giving you a 10 degrees C window of operational use. When you charge a battery or you discharge a battery, what happens is there's an exothermic reaction that generates heat. And you may have noticed that when you unplug your cell phone in the middle of a charge cycle, the battery will be warm. And the same thing happens out in the field. Well, if you're already starting at 50 degrees C, you don't have much room before you get up to 60 and your battery is going to be damaged. So the only way to really solve that is to do the same job but do it with a fraction of the amount of power. So when you look at most applications where people are using our chemical injection pumps, we're running at below 10 watts. We have many applications where we're running at 5 or 6 watts. Well, 5 or 6 watts relative to a couple of 12-volt batteries side by side is the temperature rise is almost immeasurable. It's insignificant. So the effect of that is by maintaining the batteries within their usable range, you're able to increase their reliability and reduce the frequency in which you're having to replace them. So what we talk about reducing resistance. One of the key things is it's a chemical injection pump. Every fluid end has a packing in it. Okay, and the packing is responsible for a lot of the energy associated with the running the pump. So we've developed a new product that's called a one and done. So it does two things. It drastically reduces the resistance, which reduces the current draw, and it's also chemically compatible with virtually anything you can throw at it. So when you talk about return on investment, it's not just lowering the maintenance with respect to the operation of the pump. It's also just protecting the fluid ends from exposure to what seems like an ever-evolving nature of these chemicals that the industry is using. They're becoming much more sophisticated. Chemicals are becoming much more sophisticated. They're becoming much more effective, and they're becoming much more difficult to manage. So when you're dealing with chemicals that will destroy a packing, this is a major problem in the field with chemical spills, labor consumption. Again, it's just one of these things where if the operators don't have to deal with it, the end user is going to be happy. Ultimately, our success is dependent upon their success. If we can help them to be successful in their operations, they're going to help us be successful in the deployment of our pumps.
That's an excellent overview, Steve. Thank you for that. And then talking about your automation capabilities that are redefining efficiency.
Okay, so within our controller for our equipment, we have the ability to be able to deliver chemical proportionately to production. This is what we have what we call small A automation and large A automation. On the small A automation side, we're talking about just sharing an analog input value from a flow computer or a flow meter. And what we can do is we can scale the output of the chemical injection pump so it delivers the chemical proportionately to flow. What a lot of people don't realize is that chemicals in oil and gas industry is generally speaking, about a top 3 expense. So when you look at the way that most chemical injection pumps in the field are run in remote locations, they're run manually. So an operator goes out in the field. He's told we need to deliver 100 liters a day into a production line. So he goes out there and he says, okay, just to be safe, I'm going to set it up so it's delivering 105, because the consequences of under-injecting can be significantly greater than the consequences of over-injecting. But that over-injecting is still a waste. So now you set up your pump, you're 5% over your required rate. Now your well starts to decline in its output ever so slightly. Over the space of a week, a month, it's dropped maybe 5 or 10%. Well, now you're not injecting 5% too much. Now you're injecting 15% too much. And if your chemical is a top 3 expense, it makes sense to try and get the chemical ratio consistent with production. So as production goes up, chemical injection rate goes up, production goes down, chemical injection rate goes down. By sharing just a simple analog input signal to our controller, we could track that. And basically what we're saying is at the end of the month, when you exercise this sort of technology, you can hit your chemical budget at the end of every month, like plus or minus $100, and it's just spot on. Again, it's a return on investment. We have customers who have paid for our equipment in 3 months just by controlling their cost of their chemicals.
No, that's a great point that you made, Steve, and talking about budgets and the return on investment. Talk to us about how, from your perspective, access to real-time operational data is changing the way that producers manage chemical injection programs.
It's an interesting thing that we see, especially in North America, where demographics are changing, and it seems like young people, all they want to do is be programmers. All they want to do is develop computer games and things like that. Getting people to work in the oil and gas industry is becoming more and more difficult. And a lot of the people that work in the industry, frankly, they're my age, and they're closer to retiring than they are in learning new technology. So there becomes an issue with the allocation of labor with respect to operations. And when you look at a typical operator, what their day looks like, they'll go from well to well. They'll drive around. All they do is they go from well to well just to make sure everything's okay, and it's called operating based on routine. Okay, and it's just all they're doing is making sure the chemical injection pump is running, making sure that there's no leaks, making sure that there's, like everything's okay. There's a way of being able to automate that. So now what you can use is real-time remote telemetry as a means of allocating labor where it's needed rather than based on routine. So by monitoring the status of the equipment on site, like a chemical injection pump, you can see that we have a problem at this site. The battery voltage is getting too low. Maybe it's dust on the solar panels. But I mean, if there's no dust on the solar panel, why go out there? And people will go out to the field and they'll check to see if there's dust on the solar panel. Well, why not interrogate the data that's in the equipment, and you can see whether or not there's a need. It's called managing labor based on exception rather than based on routine. And it is a significant cost saver.
Steve, it's been such a pleasure talking to you here at the Energy Connect studio. Thank you for your superb insights and for coming down to the Energy Connect studio.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. That was the president of LCO Technologies, Steve Frawler. Thanks for watching, and you can get more interviews like this at energyconnects.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and we'll be back with more studio interviews from ADIPEC 2025.